Welcome back to The Big Hit. I'm Jake Spagnol.
And I'm Mike Costa.
And we've got the second round of Scrap for Your City coming up this week. In our first matchup, we have Hunter Mitchell with Denver, Colorado, going against Stephen Langdon Jr. with Dallas, Texas.
After that, we have the winners of Jake Taylor in Miami and Joey Crispin with Chicago going at it. Same point system, 2-2-4 with the 3 questions, and we got 3 questions that are different this time, mix things up. So let's get to it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first segment of Scrap for Your City. And in this matchup, we're going to be having Stephen Langdon Jr. go up against Hunter Mitchell. And for the judges panel, we're going to have Jake Slobotnik, the guy in the bow tie, as many may know him, Dylan Barkas, and the beard of broadcasting himself, Jeff Hart, and that's me. The first question we're going to be starting off with, gentlemen, is what is your city's best championship team? Stephen, how about you?
So my best championship team has to be the 93 Dallas Cowboys, without a doubt. They had the most wins in franchise history that year. It was their first of many Super Bowls during that era. They had Troy Aikman had his best career year that season, most passing yards and most passing touchdowns in his career. They had Emmitt Smith, who had 2,000 yards from scrimmage. They had Michael Irvin, nearly 1,400 receiving yards, and then they had 6 players go to a Pro Bowl, and they won against the Buffalo Bills 52-17. That is the 4th largest margin of victory in the Super Bowl ever. Not to mention they did have Deion Sanders during that time as well. They were just an unstoppable team, and they, without a doubt, have to be the best championship team in Dallas football history.
I can agree with you on one thing. It was the best team in Dallas history, but it was not nearly as good as the 1998 Denver Broncos. They went 14-2 that year, which was better than Dallas's record of 13-3. John Elway had statistically a lot better of a season than Troy Aikman did in that year, and Terrell Davis had possibly the best season by a running back ever, with rushing for over 2,000 yards and 23 touchdowns, which is by far the most touchdowns anybody scored on a 2,000-yard season. Now, they went through the entire season and they beat opponents by a combined score of almost 200 points, which is crazy to beat a team in a 16-game season to outscore your opponents by 200 points. Then, not to mention, they had the league MVP that year in Terrell Davis, and they had a receiving trio, one of the best trios in NFL history, in Rod Smith, Ed McCaffrey, and Shannon Sharp, who had 2 of those were 1,000-yard receivers, and one of them had 750 yards.
And only one of them is in the Hall of Fame. Meanwhile, all my players are in the Hall of Fame.
But, yet again, Rod Smith has been snubbed for multiple years, and Ed McCaffrey had a better year. Ed McCaffrey and Rod Smith in 1998 had better years than the Cowboys wide receivers in 93. We aren't talking about Hall of Fame because that is over a career. We're talking about just 1 year, 1993 versus 1998, and Ed McCaffrey and Rod Smith both had better years than Irvin. Not to mention the fact that they went the entire playoffs without having a team compete against them. They blew out the first round. They blew out the Miami Dolphins, who were a good team that year, 38-3. Now, a team that leads by their offense held a good offense to 3 points. That's a really good team. Denver had arguably the best team in the 90s during this year.
Besides Miami, who did they have to play in the playoffs?
They had to go against Bill Parcells' Jets, and as a Jets fan,
But it was the Jets. They had a good season, but they weren't a Super Bowl contender. Meanwhile, in the NFC, we had to go against teams such as San Francisco. They had to go against just phenomenal teams throughout the entire playoffs. In fact, my team even scored over 100 points in 3 games. So, including 52 in the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowl.
there were 3 AFC teams in 1998 that had over 12 wins. That was not the case in 93 for the Cowboys. The AFC was extremely tough in 1998. It was one of the toughest years for the AFC in the 90s, and yet the Broncos completely blew away all competition during the entire year and the postseason.
My team also blew away competition by scoring 136 points in 3 games. That's actually insane to even think about.
But throughout the entire season, they had a significantly less point differential than the 98 Broncos. They had less than 150 point difference, where the 98 Broncos had a few points under 200. It was like a 48-point
Well, while you
difference
have good players, I had Hall of Famers throughout the entire team on Dallas.
Hall of Fame doesn't show 1 year. Hall of Fame shows a career.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. That was definitely a good first-round matchup. I got sense a little tension there, but the judges have decided, and it will be Denver 2-1. So John Elway and his team win the first round. But for the next question, I'm going to let Jake ask both of you.
My question that I have to ask you guys is, which decade was your city most successful in?
So for Denver sports overall, the best decade was the 90s. First off, let's look at the Colorado Avalanche. They entered the season as an expansion team in 1993. Now in baseball, with an organization that has over 100 players, it is the hardest sport to enter as an expansion team. So you'd think, well, they will come out and they will suck for years. They will be terrible for years. Now, they had a winning record 3 of the first 5 years in existence. They greatly exceeded expectations, including having the 1997 NL MVP Larry Walker on their team. Now we'll look at the Denver Nuggets. They had 2 key historic NBA players play during the 90s. In Alex English, he only played 2 years in the 90s with Denver. But then, as soon as he left, they got the block king Dikembe Mutombo, joined their team, who averaged almost 4 blocks per game during his time in Denver. Then, look at the Avalanche. They were only in Denver for 5 seasons during the 90s, because they moved from Quebec 5 seasons into the decade. When they moved from Quebec, they were not a winning team. As soon as they entered Denver, out of those 5 seasons, 4 of them, they made the conference finals. And 1 of them, they won the Stanley Cup, behind possibly the best forward goalie duo ever in Joe Sakic and Patrick Waugh. And now we go to the best team in the 90s, the Denver Broncos. This was the best decade of football for one of the NFL's most storied franchises. They made the playoffs 5 times, including 2 Super Bowl wins. They had the top passer, rusher, receiver, and kicker all play during this decade. They had as rated by the NFL Hall of Fame, they had the best quarterback of the 90s and the best tight end of the 90s. And towards the end of the decade, they had one of the best wide receivers in the league.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, while you have your 2 Super Bowl championships, I have 3 with the Dallas Cowboys. 3 in 1 decade. Just incredible. The Dallas Cowboys, led by Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Larry Allen, Deion Sanders, all Hall of Famers. They had 6 division championships, 3 Super Bowls, like I said, including the Super Bowl 30 against the Steelers. Sorry, Steelers fans. We also had the Dallas Stars, who, by the way, moved to Dallas in the 1993-1994 season and made the playoffs all but one season. They had 4 division titles and won the Stanley Cup in the 90s. The Texas Rangers, 3 AL West titles and had a very strong lineup and had Aaron Nola, the strikeout king, of course. The Mavericks barely left unsaid, but while you have, your little division titles and all like that, little playful stuff, I have championships. And championships make a decade for a team and for a city.
So, you did leave one team out of that. You left the Dallas Mavericks out of that, who during the 90s had the worst decade of any sports team in any sport. Out of the 10 worst seasons in NBA history, the 1990s Mavericks had 3 of those seasons in one decade, where they had less than 13 wins.
But remember, I have championships by the rest of the teams.
You have championships in one sport. You have the Dallas Stars won 1 championship.
1 championship. Lord Stanley won the championship with Lord Stanley. Stanley Cup. How many Stanley Cups did Avalanche win?
1.
Okay, so we're even there. So we're even there. How many Super Bowls did the Denver Broncos win?
They won 2 out of 3.
And I won 3.
Okay. But it is a sports city. It isn't 2 sports teams.
Sports city.
It is a sports city. How many playoff games, even though they won the West 3 times?
Hey, what happened
let me talk.
What happened to the Colorado Rockies? What happened to the Rockies? Where's the Rockies?
The Rockies had double, even though they only made the playoffs 1 time in the 90s.
1 time?
They doubled the playoff wins by the Texas Rangers in 1 year. The Texas Rangers made the playoffs 3 years, in 3 out of 4 years, but they won 1 game. They got swept twice and won 1 game in 1 year. But
at least the Rangers made the playoffs. At least the Rangers were competitive during the 90s.
The Rangers.
What were the Rockies doing? Sitting on their butts in October.
The Rockies
My team was not.
They were an expansion team. They were not projected to do well. Expansion teams are not projected to do well. They had the best expansion 5 years since the 19th.
The Stars moved.
The Stars made the playoffs. The Stars made the Stanley Cup
They
Finals.
were not a winning team when they moved.
They made the Stanley Cup Finals the year before they moved, and they played the Penguins. The only reason they lost was because they played Jaromir Jagr and Mario Lemieux.
Gentlemen, before we make the judgment, I would like to remind you guys, Hunter, the Colorado Avalanche are not a baseball team, and Aaron Nola did not pitch in the 90s. That was Nolan Ryan.
Say something about that.
Randy Jessic would have a stroke right now. But with an overwhelming sweep, all 3 of us have picked Dallas as question number 2 winner. So now tied at 2, and we'll hand it off to Dylan for question numero 3.
So for question 3, the winner-take-all question, we have to ask, why is your city better than your opponents and deserves to move on to the finals? Hunter, let's start with you.
My city deserves to move on to the finals because we have consistency among all sports. It took until the 90s, even though the Rangers were a team since 1972, it took them until the 90s, 96, to even make the playoffs. That is not success. You look at the Dallas Mavericks. They have a championship in 2011.
Against one of the best teams in NBA history. What many consider a juggernaut team.
This is my chance to talk now. You will get your chance to talk. They went up against a Heat team who was completely assembled during that year and had 0 chemistry. They went up against a LeBron who has won what? 3 out of 9 finals appearances? A person who chokes in the biggest moments, who can't lead his team to win a finals. You have that compared to the Denver Nuggets, who have had Hall of Fame caliber players, even though they haven't been the best teams, have Hall of Famers throughout their entire history. How many Hall of Famers do the Dallas Mavericks have?
Dirk Nowitzki.
He's not a Hall of Famer yet.
Not yet, but he will be. First ballot Hall of Famer right there.
but they have none right now.
Jason Kidd played with the Dallas Mavericks.
They played together, but they're not Hall of Famers right now. See, and that's all in one small area of history. Denver has been better for pretty much all of history. Dallas has the Cowboys. Other than that, they haven't had much success. It is about being a better sports city, not a better sports team. It is a better sports city. And overall, Denver by far has the better sports city.
Okay, so looking at history, I'm going to compare teams. We got Texas Rangers, Colorado Rockies. In my opinion, the Rangers absolutely dominate the Colorado Rockies. Absolutely dominate. Okay, so no doubt in my mind, the Cowboys absolutely, without a doubt, have the Denver Broncos. I mean, 5 Super Bowls, there's no doubt that they are one of the best franchises in NFL history, tied for third most behind the Steelers and the Patriots. And then, let's go next. Okay, so we got the Dallas Stars, who had one of the best hockey players of all time in Mike Modano. Okay.
Wasn't as good as Joe Sakic or Patrick Waugh.
But overall, Dallas Stars or Colorado Avalanche. I'm going to take the Dallas Stars, no doubt. No doubt.
How many championships?
1.
Well, Colorado has 2. By the time Dallas has been in the league longer than the Stars. They've been in Dallas Dallas has been in the league longer than Colorado has. But yet Colorado has more finals wins. They have more playoff success, more regular season success, more Hall of Famers. They have a deeper history.
But then you can look for someone like the Dallas Cowboys, who have had
one team. The Cowboys. I'm not going to sit here and
say one team.
I'm not going to sit here and say
one
that the
team
Cowboys
throughout history they have been incredible.
I'm saying the Cowboys
70s.
are the only team that Dallas has that has had consistent success over decades. The Avalanche have always had success since they moved to Denver. The Broncos have had success spread out throughout decades.
But then again, you have Colorado.
The Nuggets have success.
What's Colorado doing now? What's Colorado doing now? All their sports teams, they're not that great.
When was the last time Dallas won a championship?
Dallas won a championship in the 90s.
The Broncos won a championship a couple years ago. They've been to 2 Super Bowls in the 2010s.
But then you have something like the foreseeable future, where you have an incredible team that they're building up with the Dallas Mavericks. One of the best young talents in the league, Luka Doncic, right now is taking the league by storm and could very well be Rookie of the Year. The Dallas Mavericks are looking incredibly well for the years to come, in my opinion.
Other than Doncic, who do they have?
Hey, what do the Nuggets have?
What do the Nuggets have?
Jokic.
The Nuggets are the second best team in the hardest conference in basketball history right now. The Nuggets are by far the better team than the Mavericks right now. The Mavericks are in 12th place in the Western Conference, about to play their final game tonight, where the Nuggets are in second place behind only the Golden State Warriors, who all 5 of their starters have been all-stars. A completely stacked team, and Denver is the second best team in the NBA in the Western Conference behind them.
Yeah,
they
but then you have
7 players.
But then you have then you have another team like the Denver Broncos, the Denver Broncos absolutely they aren't good right now. Let's be flat out.
The Denver Broncos,
they're trash.
Steven,
absolute
Hunter,
trash.
The judges have made their decisions. With a 3-0 sweep in the 3rd round, Denver has won the Scrap for Your City matchup.
Hey, good game. Hey,
deal
good
breaker.
luck. Hey, this man, he could win the finals. Okay, good luck to him. Good luck to him, and very well fought. Very well fought.
Welcome back to the Big Hit, here for the second matchup of the semifinals. For judges, I'm Jake Spagnol, this is Mike Costa, and this is Kyle Scott. Over here, our opponents will be Joey Chrisman defending Chicago, and on the right is Hot Take Jake Taylor defending Miami, Florida. Well, let's just get right to it. Mike Costa, you want to give him that first question?
I do. I would love to. Boys, first question, same as the last. What is your city's best championship team?
You know what? It was tough for me because was I going to pick the only undefeated football team of all time, or was I going to pick probably the best basketball team ever assembled? And obviously I went with the best basketball team ever assembled. And Ray Allen, Chris Anderson, Shane Battier, Chris Bosh, Mario Chalmers, Udonis Haslam, LeBron James, Norris Cole, Rashard Lewis, Mike Miller, and Dwayne Wade. They won 66-16. They won a 27-game win streak. They beat the San Antonio Spurs, and that core group of players also they went to 4 straight finals, but that was the best team because they won the championship that year. You know, they finally came back. They had the most iconic shot in NBA history, and Ray Allen hitting that three-pointer to force overtime, which then led to Game 7, which then saw Dwayne Wade and the Miami Heat raise a trophy yet again, an NBA championship. So that was so iconic because, you know, that team was just completely stacked. It's probably the first super team we kind of ever seen be assembled. And who doesn't want to see just pure domination leading all the way up to a championship? Best team ever.
While I do agree the Miami team was good, but the best team NBA has ever seen was the Golden State Warriors. However, the best team one of the best teams the NFL has ever seen was the 1985 Chicago Bears. And let me tell you why. The Bears steamrolled their way through the regular season with a 15-1 record, but what most people don't understand is the beginning was kind of shaky. They were trailing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 17-28 at halftime. After a tongue lashing by coach Mike Ditka, by the way, is a Hall of Famer, the Chicago responded, but not letting Tampa score another point the whole game and came back to win 38-28. And this time, the championship team was born. While the Bears were led by the quarterback, Jim McMahon and Steve Fuller, Hall of Famer running back Walter Payton was the fuel for the offensive car. Payton had a huge season, rushing for 1,551 yards and 9 touchdowns, but also had 49 catches for 483 yards and 2 scores. Now, let's talk about the defense, the iconic defense, the name that gave them the Bears. The defense is 4-6, and the coach was by Buddy Ryan, who, by the way, invented the 4-6 defense. The defense was led by Hall of Famer Mike Singletary, who won Defensive Player of the Year and led the Bears in tackles. However, the defensive line was a straight-up wall. Defensive end Richard Dent led the NFL in 17 sacks. The Lions and won Super Bowl MVP in Super Bowl 20. They also had Dan Hampton, William the Refrigerator Perry, and Steve McMichael. The Lions stacked up 26.5 sacks by themselves. Now, the secondary is really good, too. It was led by Gary Fensick and David Durson as safeties. The corners were Mike Richardson and Leslie Frazier. The starting secondary combined for an astounding 20 interceptions in the season. Altogether, the Bears would have 5 Pro Bowlers just on that defense alone. Now, the Super Bowl. They played the Patriots, blew them out of the water, 46-10. That 10 points that the Patriots scored was the only 10 points scored against the Bears in the playoffs. Chicago finished an 18-1 record and allowed only 5 teams that they faced that year to score more points than 10. They had the greatest running back of all time, Walter Payton, who won the 85 Offensive Man of the Year. They had one of the best middle linebackers in Mike Singletary, 10-time Pro Bowler, also 85 Defensive Player of the Year, and had 1985 Coach of the Year, Mike Ditka.
All right, well, I can see why you have so much written down because it's going to be so hard to defend something like that, considering the best championship team came 34 years ago, so I'm not sure you remember it too well because I remember this very well because it happened like about, I don't know, 6 years ago, and it's the greatest basketball team of all time. You can't say it's not. I mean, literally, the only reason Golden State's a super team now is because of this team right here. It was the best championship team basketball has ever seen. Definitely the best championship team that Miami has ever seen.
That's a complete lie because the Warriors had a better record than the Miami Heat and still won the championship when they faced LeBron when he was on the Cleveland Cavaliers, by the way. LeBron wasn't on the Miami Heat all the time. So they had him for a little bit. Where they
had one, they won, though.
Yeah, they won. But guess what? Golden State beat them. So even though you had LeBron on the Miami Heat.
Why is Golden State? What's Golden State doing this? It's all about Miami. It's about Miami
You said
Miami
they're the
winning
best
right
team
here.
the NBA's ever seen, even though their record was better, and they still won the championship with Steph Curry. Your claim that the best team the NBA's ever seen is a complete lie.
Well, your claim that Walt Payton's the best running back you've ever seen, that NFL of all time, it's also.
I mean, he's nicknamed Sweetness for a reason, isn't he?
Because if I was being honest, in the 80s compared to now, the defense the Chicago Bears have this past season would kill The Chicago Bears, the 1985 season.
I wouldn't say
You mean
that
Khalil
at all.
Mack would Khalil Mack single-handedly eat all those guys alive?
I don't think so, bro.
All right, boys. I'm with Jake. Wasn't alive to see it, so I don't know if it actually happened. But I think it's a unanimous sweep. We got Chi-Town the Bears. Joey wins it in the first one. Jake, would you like to take us to the second question?
Absolutely, I would love to do that. So, moving on, we just had your best championship team, but now we want to hear which decade was your city most successful in. Since Jake started last time, Joey, go ahead and start us off.
Well, the 1990s was Chicago's decade. The Chicago Bulls won 6 championships in 8 years, 2 three-peats, from 1991 to 1993, and then again 1996 to 1998. Oh yeah, they had, NBA legend Michael Jordan to help them along with that as well. The dynasty was like no other. Phil Jackson, their coach, unified players to the point where they made a mission to play all 82 games. To put that into perspective, during the San Antonio decade, or dynasty, Greg Popovich once rested starters Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, Danny Green, and Manny Ginobili, all in a single game. Eric Spoelstra of the Miami Heat and Steve Kerr of the Golden State Warriors have also been guilty of resting multiple stars in the game as well. Phil Jackson never did that. Not because he was cruel and didn't want to rest his players when they were injured, but because his players made a mission not to get injured and play the whole entire season.
So that's the best decade right there for the best decade? Yeah. Because of one sport? All right. Well, best decade here, 2005, 2015 for Miami. The Miami Heat won 3 championships and went to 5 finals, but it's just not about that. It's just about basketball and one specific sport only because, it's the whole city. And so then you had the Miami Dolphins, 4 winning seasons. The Panthers, a new team. They made the playoffs twice. They drafted fantastic. They drafted Huberdeau, Barkov, Ekblad. They got Roberto Luongo. They're doing great things. They won the division twice in those 10 years, and that's fantastic for a franchise so early on in the NHL. The Miami Dolphins building up, you can't do, 4 winning seasons out of 10 years, you can't really complain too much about that. You look at it over in the Miami Marlins had 4 winning seasons as well, and Miami University had 8. So all in all, it's a pretty successful year in Miami. They got 3 championships out of it. The whole sports wide in that 10 years. It was good for every single sport. It was positive. Some's rebuilding. You can look forward to the future. You can look back and the championships you won. You can enjoy the present teams right there. So really, in that whole decade, combined into one, all the sports, better decade.
Let me ask this question. When you rebuild a team, when you want to get players on your team, your ultimate goal is to do what? Win a championship. How many championships did your city win in that span?
3.
3? That's it? That's all your team won? Well, guess what? Like I said, 6. The ultimate goal of a sports team is to win a championship. If they don't do that, sure, they had a winning season, but the ultimate goal is to win a championship. If they don't do that, then technically...
So what about the Chicago Bears, Chicago Cubs, Chicago White Sox, and the Chicago Blackhawks? What did they do in the 90s? What they didn't win.
Yeah, they didn't win, but then again, the Bulls carried all the championships for them as well. Like I said, 6 championships. The Michael Jordan, you had, Scottie Pippen, the coach Phil Jackson, 6.
Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Chris Bosh.
Dwayne, how many? He had 3 championships? That's it?
Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of lame, dude.
All right, it's a unanimous sweep on that one. Jay got you on that one. It's the whole city, which is, I think, the only reason why we voted that way. But now it is 2 points apiece. But now we're going to go to the third question. Kyle, do you want to feed him this last one?
I'd love to, Jake. Thanks. Gentlemen, you've come this far. Now, for 4 points, tell us, why is your city better than your opponents, and why do you deserve to go to the finals?
Picture this. You're the greatest athlete on the planet. You can go to any team, any city. You are on national television. This is a national televised event, the biggest free agency event of all time. Where's this best athlete going to go? South Beach, baby, because Miami's #1. If that's all you need, if LeBron James wanted to go there, why don't you want to go there? They are fantastic. You got Miami U football team. You got the Florida Panthers. Why would you not want to go to the Florida Panthers with all the young talent here now? But in general, South Beach for life. I'm going to let you go, and then I got some ammunition, baby.
Your opinion on they're the best. But then again, the fan bases of Chicago is one of the most loyal and passionate fan bases in America. The Bears have the 6th best fan base in the NFL. Cubs waited 108 years for them to win a championship, but yet still stuck by them. And they keep filling stadiums, merchandise, and support of their team. But then again, Chicago just doesn't have. Chicago has the 4 main sports: baseball, football, hockey, and basketball. But Chicago also has Major League Soccer teams, such as the Fire, which is a major league. It's a male soccer team. They have also a few of women's sports league professional teams: the Sky, which is baseball, and Red Stars, which is soccer. But if you're not into really, professional sports teams, you want college sports teams, they have 6 Division I athletic programs and 4 within city limits. DePaul, Loyola, Chicago State, and UIC all play games in the city, while Northwestern Northern Illinois are close by as well. Now remember, Chicago has a rich in sports history. The Blackhawks are one of the hockey's original 6 teams, and great Bobby Hall remains the franchise's all-time leading goal scorer. Like because 85 Bears, Walter Payne made Soldier Field status as an actual war memorial, hence Soldier Field after World War I. Besides all that, the greatest basketball player, like I said, won 6 from Chicago. But beside all of that, don't forget this is a city of championships. The city won 18 championships, 6 from the Bulls, 3 from the Cubs, 3 from the White Sox, 5 from the Blackhawks, and 1 from the Bears. 18 in all, just for the city of Chicago.
Yeah, and you say it's rich history, but if you're a Chicago fan and you personally are alive right now, the only thing you have is what your parents and what you watch and what everything tells you. You've never experienced anything. You look at it, Chicago Cubs. If you look at the MLB's championship droughts, the Cubs and the White Sox have the longest one in MLB history. So I don't know what you're talking about winning. The Cubs were founded in 1903, Sox 1901, Bulls 1966, Blackhawks 1926, and the Bears 1920. And all you have to show for that is those little amount of championships. Look at Miami. If you look at Miami, overall, they have 12, and in our lifetime, 6. You look at the Chicago Blackhawks, the original 6, half their championships came when there were only 6 teams in the league. They had to wait all that time. So the loyal Chicago fans, who are they cheering for? They're cheering for losers, 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 losers. Imagine going through over 100 years of losing just to celebrate what? 1 championship in over 100 years. The second longest drought, the Chicago White Sox. They had 87 years before they won in 2005, I believe it was. So you had to wait 87 years for that team to win. You had to wait 100-something years for the Cubs to win. The Bears haven't won in the last 34 years. So I can't really see how that's a better city overall. I mean, you've been alive for 5 championships. If I was a Miami fan, if I lived in Miami, I was alive for 6 of them.
I mean, it's because mainly your fan base is just a bunch of bandwagoners, where everybody in Chicago is loyal as hell because everybody's still with them.
Because they've been around, because if you look at how long every single franchise there, you combine all those years up, it's 479 years compared to Miami's 129. Miami's so young, and yet they're 6 championships away from catching Chicago. I don't understand.
Whenever LeBron went to Miami, literally millions of people started liking the Heat because, like I said, LeBron, as well, everybody from Chicago waited hundreds of years to watch their team win championships. They never left. Well, you guys.
Where'd Miami go? I mean, they've only been around for how many years? No one left. Who left?
Everybody. Nobody liked Miami when they're doing good. Who watches Miami games now?
The Bears haven't been good in 35 years. What do you mean they haven't won in 35 years?
Yeah, but guess what? The stadium is still fully packed every single game.
And Hard Rock Stadium isn't? Can you tell me how many people go in the Hard Rock Stadium?
Not as much as the Bears.
True, probably.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was really good, guys. Thank you so much. But the champion is going to go back to the finals. It is Miami, is what we have voted for. And by the way, Mike Costa just wants to know that Minneapolis was robbed, but that has nothing to do with this. But thank you so much for watching The Big Hit. It was a good matchup between Joey and Jake. Stay tuned next week where we will have the finals between Hunter Mitchell and Jake Taylor. Thank you for watching.